I went full time with my own business as a partnership business with my still business partner of like nearly 15 years now. Out of having a what my mum would call proper job for a while, so full-time employee at a charity running a radio station that ended up being the second largest in the UK. And sadly, they took out a few many too big loans. They wanted to all move everything under one place into a building. They spent £250,000 on refurbishing a beautiful building. But sadly, I didn't get the funding applications they were expecting and had to fold. So I was always wanting to work for myself full time, but there's nothing like being pushed into it to have the opportunity and the reason to do that. I remember working with a coach at the time on a kind of a women's mentoring program. And she said, what would be the catalyst to going full time? Because at the time, I was doing condensed hours in my employee status, 4 days a week. All my hours are in 4 days a week. So say 40 hours across 4 days ended up being about an average 10 hours a day. And then Friday, I would be self-employed. I would be freelancing and working for myself under that guise. So what was the catalyst? The catalyst was being made redundant from the full-time position to suddenly then go, right, well, I guess this is the time to decide whether we're going to make it work or not. And I was lucky enough to be having worked with someone in the employee setup that actually we said, you know what, we've got some projects on the go anyway. If we were to offer us do it, but just in a different format, in a different structure of a business, would they be up for it? We had that conversation and it ended up being a really good 18-month program where we were working for ourselves under our own business banner, but we were still kind of doing the work that we were planning to do as that organization anyway. So it definitely needed something to happen for me to do it. I think I would have always said like, oh, I'm not quite ready. I'm not quite ready. I'm not quite ready. Because prior to the employee job, I had worked for myself with lots of different companies, doing a lot of audio in broadcasting. And there wasn't really no permanence to that. You had days here, there, and everywhere. So it was a very different structure than the way I run my business today. So finding the contacts and the clients is probably one of the hardest things. So I think if you do have the ability to ramp up before you go self-employed or freelance, building your networks, knowing people, sounding some people out. I know that my clients that I was working with on a 1 day a week basis were very happy to have me do more days. But it was a matter of fitting in schedules. So we'd had that conversation. I wasn't personally ready to make that jump into full-time self-employed status at the time, but those relationships I'd already built along the way and those partners that we'd worked with in an organization, the fact that they basically turned around and said, you know what, as long as it's you as an individual who's going to be delivering this piece of work for us, the sort of the name of the company that you're doing it in doesn't matter as much. And I think that because we had that relationship in place already, they didn't really care what format the company structure was. It was more about the person who they were going to get. So I think that definitely helped. I leaned on my people. I said, hey, listen, this has happened. Have you got any work? Like, do you plan on having any projects coming up you might consider me for? Because now I've, currently got a 4 day a week gap where I'm completely free. So it was great to be able to have, I don't know, been that savvy, just, I like talking to people anyway. So I think it was a bit of a natural thing anyway, but knowing that you're only as good as the people that you know, especially if you're self-employed. It's really hard to get a permanent contract as a freelancer. So you do need to lean on your business relationships for that. And I'm lucky that I had those in place to be able to kind of hit the ground running based on those contacts that I then went, hi, got any work? And they did, and it was great. And we carried on under a different guise, but it was because they know, like, and trusted me and they were less bothered in what format we ended up working together as a business. I would say I started working for myself. The tax man would also say I started working for myself about 25 years ago. So I, from leaving school, was freelance, and it was on sort of short-term projects. So I feel like I've sort of done this short-term project. So it was basically you would create a video production or a TV advert. You would be there for a period of time. So I would do post-production editing. So I would then be contracted for, say, 3 months at this rate, and there's no give in that contract, really. So you wanted a couple of contracts that way. Then roll on maybe 10 years or so, I did the employee thing, and then it became a partnership business. And then over the years, we've added on services. And because the partnership business is basically an umbrella organization for two sole traders, so self-employed status, there's a lot of risk involved with that. We were never really bothered by the risk because we were always delivering a service. So initially it was training as a service. We got the right insurances and things, so it was never really a problem. And I think we were always really fortunate, or maybe going back to the conversation around relationships, people never really didn't pay us. We never had the struggle. I know a lot of self-employed people talk about this as a common thing, like people aren't paying their invoice, but I think we've been really fortunate in having that. And then over the years, we've changed our offering. I mean, as a digital training company, which was what DigiEnable was very first started up by, because the topic in itself does change. 20 years ago, we were all talking about Facebooks and Twitters of the world. And now we're talking about AI and ChatGPT. So really to keep ahead of the game and keep in business, especially with our topic, we do need to be on board with things. And we've had a few iterations over the years. We've sold social media as a service. We've sold SEO as a service. And it's never really it's been exciting. We could do it, but it didn't really ever offer that helping people aspect that the coaching, the training, supports in the way that we do. So roll it on another 2 years and we created Can Do Leads, which is a company that's now been around 3 years, a limited company. So we still have the partnership business, but we set up a separate limited company because we wanted to offer a different service. So that's a software as a service model. And our USP is, yes, you can buy the software from other people, but our USP is we're using the expertise from our training and coaching business to do some wraparound support for those clients. When you talk to the taxman and HMRC and accountants, they say if you're going to do something completely different than your initial business, you should set up a separate company to make sure you're doing things in the right way and it's not cross-contaminating it in a way. So after quite a bit of advice, we set up a brand new business in that structure. And then bubbling behind the scenes, I still have Liz Hardwick as a trading company for my business and my speaking side of things. So it's almost like we've got one of everything. Which is, we've learned as we've gone to understand what is the best format of things. But I think it's been exciting to go on that journey because over 25 years of at some point working for myself continuously, even if it was just the 1 day a week while I was being an employee, it just gives you that industry knowledge that maybe you might lose touch of if you're in an employee role for a long period of time. But also, I don't know, it kind of keeps your eye on the ball as well, because you're always forever thinking, what is the opportunity? I think when people talk about entrepreneurial spirit, it's that, where's the opportunity and how can we do it? So the businesses over the years have morphed into different things and offered different services because we've seen a gap in the market. So the SEO, we offered ethical SEO as a service for a while. And really that only kind of extinguished because COVID became a thing. And we were only offering month by month contracts. So we didn't lock anyone into a contract because we absolutely still believe that's the way for us to conduct ourselves. But that also meant that everyone decided to just not want to do SEO as a service anymore. So actually we took that as an opportunity to say, let's roll it back. What do we want to do? And then even that was born out of creating a new service, and that's where Can Do Leads was born. So we've been on a bit of an adventure, and I'm sure there's more to come. I want to continue to work for myself, so I'm sure there's another 10, 20 years of different structures and ways of working that I'm sure I'll learn from along the way as well. So I've been a professional qualified speaker for probably 7 or 8 years now. Prior to that, I was a public speaker. So that's someone who doesn't get paid to speak. I would go to all the meetup based events, the Eventbrite events that I could, and try and find a speaking engagement for that. To start off with, I said yes to everything. If anyone invited me to speak on something, I would do. Probably around 20 years ago when I was working at the radio station, I got invited to speak a lot on either the topic or on a panel discussion around women in tech or women in digital. And that was great because I felt like it was a good way of putting myself on the map, especially while I was also doing the employee side of things and also having a 1 day a week freelance career. It was the ability to showcase who I was, that I was knowledgeable about what I was doing, but also potentially a bit of a lead gen activity. So nowadays, yes, I do get paid quite nicely to speak as a professional speaker, but there's still opportunities where I would do it as a lead generation activity. So, for example, the biggest difference is if I'm getting paid to speak at an event, I wouldn't necessarily mention who I am, what I do. It would absolutely be zero sales pitch. Whereas if it's a lead gen activity, depending on where you go and what you speak at, what type of event it is, there's sort of an agreed understanding that if you're not getting paid to speak at something, you can at least share a bit about who you are and what your services are. And for me, and also our business advisor would also say over the years, we've worked with him for about 15 years now, he will always say, you can go to a networking event, that's great, but if you can stand at the front of the room, or you can lead a table, or you can be one of the team that is more visible than just one of the participants, you're much more likely to get better conversions, to meet more people, to be, I mean, it's again still only based on who you know and what you do. If you're not good at what you do, then you're kind of stuffed. But if you're knowledgeable and you showcase things in the right way, a speaking opportunity can be a great way of doing things. I think one of the things I would caveat that with is now, like going back to 20 years ago, me saying yes to everything. The lead generation, no fee speaking gigs I do, there has to be the right people in the room. Because otherwise, I could just still say yes to everything, but it's not necessarily strategically the best decision for me. So I'll normally figure out who it is I'm speaking for, what the organization is, what sort of people might be in the room. If I think, okay, there's a handful of decent people I could go at, I could follow them up with some, virtual coffees or whatever. If there's a potential opportunity in the room, then that would be the sort of thing that I would consider as a no fee one. I think also it depends on what format you're talking about as well, because now as a professional speaker, I do talk on a different topic around digital productivity. But now the world is open to online options as much as in-person events. It could be that you create your own speaking engagement for yourself. You create webinars or training opportunities that then you can partner up with other people who have the community that you want to aspire to become your leads. So then you can better use your virtual opportunities, and that can even tick a load of boxes as well, because you're not necessarily having to go and physically go to an event to speak at something. So there's lots more ways you can use formats and online versions these days than there were 20 years ago when I had to go to an event to speak in person. Whereas these days, there's lots more things out there that you can pick a topic that you're passionate about. And I think one of the things I would suggest is making sure that the topic you speak on is aligned with what you want to sell. Because I think I did learn very early on, I was talking about women in tech, which was great, but it wasn't actually me selling women in tech. So that's why I needed to choose the digital productivity topic, because that's what I help people on in a variety of different ways. But it's also what I get known for. Just like in the online world, if you're posting lots of content online or doing the online webinars, making sure the topic is directly relevant to what you want to do more of in future. So my red flag is less about what people say. And yes, it is a little bit about gut instinct, but for me, it's about the way people conduct themselves. So red flags to me end up being if they're not polite, if they don't say please and thank you. If I've been for a physical coffee with someone and they've either not said thank you to the waiting staff, or they've been a bit nonchalant. We do networking round a table once a month. Your food kind of gets served to you while you're kind of networking around the table. For me, big red flag is if someone doesn't make an effort to eye contact, that as much as you're in the room and you're in the zone, just a couple of seconds to turn around and say thank you to the server. That is something that I feel is a non-negotiable for me. And a red flag for me would be in those situations, how is that potential new client dealing with others? Because I think that has a knock-on effect to dealing with you as well. Because, you know, if they think, oh, the waiting staff, like, ugh, they're so below me, you know, how are they going to be to manage you if it's a kind of client versus you're delivering something for them? That relationship, if ever there's any issues, how are they going to deal with that sort of thing? We also generally don't really work with people who maybe they have really strong opinions that don't align with our kind of ethical code of conduct. We are very kind of supportive and also kind of welcoming environment for the things that we do. So we run events. For example, I run Lancashire Women in Digital. That's an in-person and online organisation. And every gender is welcome, for example. And I know we've met certain people over the years that don't agree with that. And, you know, that's okay. You can have that opinion. But sometimes if it becomes where it's something that's a project that's a clash of opinions, it can be a real struggle. So I think there's those sorts of, we can agree to disagree. So I think if that's in place and we're respecting each other and we can absolutely have our opinions, whatever we want, you know, we wouldn't not work with someone because of their opinion, but it's about making sure that everyone's happy and supportive, that other people can have their own opinions as well. I think especially if you're going to go into an organization and, you know, you've got lots of mixed views about anything around the table, you need to be able to facilitate that conversation to some extent. If that new client you're trying to work with has already formed an opinion of how something's going to work, or this is what we need to do, and we need to get everyone to think this, then we would probably say, do you know what? I don't think it's going to be the right fit. I just don't think we're the right people for you. And in that situation, I find it hard because I would love to just be able to say, and I'll recommend you someone else instead. But if that red flag's so in our world, like just not right, I wouldn't want to recommend them to someone else instead, because I wouldn't necessarily want our friends that we would recommend to working with them either. I know it's opportunity and everything, but those are the sorts of things that really make us cautious. There's the things of people don't pay, trust your gut instinct. When I've not trusted my gut instinct, we've regretted it. But I think you kind of learn that over the years. But to really pin it down, it's those little things where you just think, oh, you didn't say thank you, or someone cut in front of you when you're trying to get to a networking event, and you're like, who's that? And then you see them get out of the car, and you're like, oh, all right, yeah, I see, yeah. So there's lots of little things like that. I think it builds up over time, but especially if you're just trying to be cautious with a brand new client, the ethics and the politeness go a long way for me. Probably the biggest time saving tool for me is really trying to get the focus time in. So with productivity, so I run the productivityclub.co.uk. We talk a lot about saving time, energy, and focus. Even more important when you work for yourself, because you can start at your desk first thing in the morning. If you don't really focus on what you're going to do with your day, the time can just drift away from you. I would also recommend looking at time-saving tools. So things like AI, which is obviously a big topic of the moment. We do a lot of workshops around harnessing the opportunities with AI. And I think if you don't know that these tools are out there, that can be a tough one. I would always recommend taking 15 or 25 minutes once a week to just review what you're doing. What tools you're using, and is there anything better out there that could help you speed up your processes? I think it's also worth, once you've sussed out your workflows, so this might not be for the very, very newbie freelancers, because I think you're still finding your feet, so you might not necessarily want to create really complicated processes or automations to start off with, but let's say you've been in business 6 months, 12 months, and you've got a good pattern going. So you know what you're doing pretty much every day of the week, or you've got a bit of a structure in place. What can you use AI and automations to do while you're out doing other things? Because let's face it, we all set up these businesses, and we're not necessarily setting up the business to do the business bit. We're setting up the business because we want to do what we love or what we're really good at. And then we realize we need to do this business thing in the background just to run our everyday lives. You need to do your accounts and your processes and your emails. So I'd highly recommend, once you've found your feet, looking at what things you might be able to automate, what tools are out there. Normally there's two kind of flags for me. If you keep saying, there must be a quicker way to do it than this, answer probably is there probably is. Or the second thing, where you just really don't like doing something, and maybe you don't have the setup or the financials right now to engage someone or employ someone on your team. Is there an AI type tool that could take some of that workload off you? A lot of the time, manual repetitive tasks can be created and set up and automated from pretty much any software or computer. A lot of tools these days have AI integrations with them as well. So if you haven't looked at the programs you're using in a while, it's definitely worth spending half an hour 1 week figuring out, right, what am I trying to achieve here? Is this the right tool for the job? And is there a better option? So I was just talking to someone today who still uses an Excel spreadsheet for all of their tracking, their clients. It's basically their CRM. And we were basically trying to support them to convert into a leads and sales tool that we use instead, that we sell. And it would speed up their processes so much and save them so much time. But the thing is, there's a bit of an investment of time and energy at the start. So it's doing that equation as well. So if you're thinking, right, I'm going to spend half an hour this week researching what tools are going to be right for me, and then next week I'm going to have a play about with something that might actually save me time. You've just spent an hour there, haven't you, to do what? If we can save an hour a week, then that's really worth it. So I would zoom out on yourself, think about what your business structure is. Is there anything where you can just do the quick wins? Like, is your inbox overflowing and you could just filter some things out with a few little rules or filters set up? Or is it a bigger thing where you want to automate your onboarding process with emails and comms for your new clients that you want to add on? There's loads of ways of doing things, but I think the first step is just taking some time to review where you're at right now. In my opinion, social media is really important for businesses because as much as your client might not be on that particular platform, it becomes a know, like, and trust factor. A lot of time now, people, yes, they're using Google, but primarily they're using social media to search for you and what you do as a due diligence activity. So, yes, you might have your website, but let's face it, a lot of websites aren't really up to date as they should be. And so we go as a secondary way of finding out information onto different social media platforms. If you've got something on there on a semi-regular basis, I mean, some people will say you need to post 3 times a day. If you're just working for yourself and it's just you, that can be really limiting in terms of the time you've got to actually do that. But that versus someone looking at your profile and seeing nothing, seeing tumbleweed. The last time you posted was 3 years ago. I was doing my due diligence on someone that I wanted to take a service off recently. And on the bottom of their website, they had 2 or 3 different social media links. And yet all of those maybe hadn't been posted on for 2 to 3 years. I mean, just get rid then. Um, because it started me questioning, have they gone out of business? And especially since COVID, I think it's really important that we still showcase that we are in business, whether you're at capacity and can't take any more clients on right now, or you have got capacity and you are openly accepting clients that are new. Social media can be a great way of just showcasing that. But people want to buy from people, don't they? We know that. You might have your shiny website that's like the curated version of Liz with the beautiful high-res photos of me speaking at an event or doing some training session. People don't want that. People want to scratch the surface and find out a bit more about who I am. Especially if someone's, people buy from people, they don't really know much about me yet. Social media is a great way of showcasing a bit more behind the scenes. People love a bit of juicy gossip, whether you admit it or not. We've all Googled people we probably shouldn't have, or we've Googled a client or a customer, and we want to know a bit more about them. And I think also that can be a really useful tool as an icebreaker, because if you can understand more about your client's personality and personal interests and preferences, you can potentially connect with them quicker and a more deeper level than just, you providing a service or product that they're going to be interested in procuring. Becomes that thing that you can utilize to build a longer term relationship. So sometimes, like we always say, we will get in contact with our clients at least every 6 months. We're not actively working with them. Social media just made that a hell of a lot simpler. Like I can ping them a message or share them a link that I found that I thought might be interesting. It's again that know, like, and trust factor in marketing. We're just chipping away at being more visible and being there and go, Liz, I've been meaning to get in touch with you. I want to bring you in for an event, or I want to bring you in to redo that training for you, for our staff that we had last year. It's just that front of mind marketing activity as well. And it might be that you don't get that all the time, but you're dripping those little opportunities in. And social media just opens the game so much wider to achieve that. So highly recommend looking at what social media is right for you. Don't be on everything, because otherwise, that will massively zap your time. But go where you think it's most appropriate for your clients, but also where you could have a bit of fun as well. Because I think the minute someone can see you're actually enjoying Creating the content or sharing those updates, the more likely they are to resonate with you and see that authenticity for what it is as well. So for me, work-life balance or trying to have that more grounded lifestyle, I absolutely have always really found important. So a couple of things that I think have done me well over the years, and I kind of learned this quite early on when I was doing both an employee and a freelance role, was getting even December before the start of January, looking ahead at the whole year and blocking out my holidays, and to some extent making them absolutely non-negotiable. To not, if I get work offered these particular weeks, I'm going to turn it down and say no, or I'm going to recommend someone else, because there will always be something to do. On the business side of stuff, there'll always be something new to do, professional development that you want to be learning, personal stuff that you want to be improving within your business. You improve you, so you improve the kind of the business acumen. So I would always have my holidays, to the extent now I've pretty much blocked out my holidays for the next 2 years already. It might not be that I know where I'm going to go on holiday, but it's going to be that time off, because if you're running at, like, let's say 90% capacity on your own as a freelancer, or even if you've got a team but everyone's at capacity, at some point, if you don't take a break, you are going to burn out. Been there, done that. Got a solid 2 or 3 years into DigiEnable, which was the partnership business, and just completely burnt out. I was a highly functioning person that had burnout. So I was still doing the do. Everything was really exhausting and really hard, and I wasn't, delivering as higher quality as I could have done. You're still getting great feedback, but feeling absolutely exhausted at the end of every day, and getting to the point where I kind of questioned, do I really want to be doing this? And I absolutely did, but it was because of the burnout and the exhaustion, and not having had enough holidays, enough downtime, enough time just to do absolutely nothing. Um, I was just exhausted. I'd had enough, like mentally and physically by that point. So I absolutely always have my holidays booked in, if not more. I try and work a 4-day work week, and I also try and work 10 months of the year. Certain years it doesn't work, but that's what I'm aiming for. I love being able to utilize my Fridays for family time, going and pushing a trolley around the shops to do the weekly shop, because it's not going to be carnage of a weekend. Doing the life admin. And I think, scheduling in the time to do those life bits is really important. And for me, the thing that keeps me grounded in between those holidays, because I realize I need to have a holiday booked to look forward to a holiday, to know where I'm going on that holiday, to say, I'm going on holiday in 2 weeks to Turkey. That's my motivation to work really, really hard now, and then have a complete switch off when I'm there. So I've got that pretty sussed over the years. So what is your motivation to get to the end? Because when you run your own business, you're self-employed, there is never going to be a stop time. Even if you're working on projects, the project might finish, but you're already currently looking to say, well, what's the next project going to be? Where am I going to get my next project and my next, load of money in from as well? So that's always a constant worry in your mind. For me, every morning, I have a morning ritual that I do without fail. So that's my non-negotiable as part of my sort of day, both a working day and a non-working day. And that really sets me up with a positive, really good intention. And I always kind of say, what's my one thing I'm going to do today? And that could be business or it could be personal. Everyone has the different way of setting their mornings up. And I think figuring out how that works best for you, so that you're rested, obviously having a good sleep the night before, but also what works for you. One of my friends is a para triathlete. He's won loads of gold medals. His thing is getting up at 6 a.m. in the morning and going for a swim. Now that's not my thing, but that's definitely his thing. So obviously everyone's got a different way of doing things. And I think it's figuring out what that is for you.